I set my heavy leather bag down on the hardwood floor of the entryway, letting out a long, exhausted sigh. 90 days in Tokyo. 90 days of endless meetings, terrible sleep, and surviving on convenience store coffee. But I had done it. I had finalized the partnership deal for Vance Tech, securing our future and turning my small startup into a legitimate player in the tech world. I pulled out my phone, checking the time. 11:30 p.m. I had skipped the post-deal dinner, caught the earliest flight back to Los Angeles, and rushed straight home to surprise my wife, Chloe. Holding my shoes so my footsteps wouldn't betray me, I crept down the hallway toward the living room. Low light spilled across the polished floorboards, accompanied by the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and soft, confident laughter. "To the smartest move of your career," a man's voice smooth as silk echoed from the lounge. My chest tightened. I recognized that voice instantly. It belonged to Julian Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Media and my primary corporate investor. What was he doing in my house at almost midnight? "I still can't believe how easy it was," Chloe's voice replied, bubbling with giggles. "Ethan spent 3 months overseas running around like a desperate puppy, while you handled everything right under his nose." I froze in the shadow of the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. "Your husband is a brilliant engineer, Chloe, but he's a terrible businessman," Julian chuckled, the sound of champagne pouring filling the quiet room. "He trusted me blindly. Bribing 2 of your board members took less than $50,000. Once they agreed, forging Ethan's authorization signature on the acquisition contract was child's play." "And Vance Tech is officially yours now?" Chloe asked. "As of 5 o'clock this afternoon," Julian declared smoothly. "I bought his entire life's work for pennies on the dollar. He has no company, no code, and no leverage. When he gets back from Japan, he won't even have a security badge to enter the building." My mind went completely blank. The air left my lungs as if I had been punched directly in the stomach. 3 years of sleepless nights, blood, sweat, and sacrificed health, stolen in a single afternoon. By my investor. With my wife's help. I stepped out from behind the wall and into the bright lights of the living room. "What did you just say?" Chloe gasped, dropping her glass. It shattered against the marble table, sparkling wine splashing over her expensive heels. Julian merely lowered his glass, a smirk playing on his thin lips as he straightened his designer suit jacket. "Ethan," Chloe whispered, her face going pale for half a second before her eyes hardened. "You weren't supposed to be back until Friday. Is that really all you have to say to me?" I stepped closer, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "I was in Tokyo destroying myself to build a future for us. And you sat here helping Julian steal my company?" "It wasn't personal, Ethan. It was just business," Julian said smoothly, resting an arm on the back of my sofa. "My sofa. You built something valuable, but you lacked the ruthless edge to turn it into an empire. I simply stepped in to maximize its potential. You forged my signature." I screamed, closing the distance between us. "You bribed my board. That is illegal, Julian. I'll call the police right now. I'll sue you into the ground." Julian let out a cold, mocking laugh. "With what money, Ethan? Check your corporate banking app. I froze the accounts 2 hours ago. You don't have the funds to pay a lawyer to review a contract, let alone fight me in federal court." I pulled out my phone with trembling hands, tapping frantically on the screen. My access was denied. Everything was gone. I turned to Chloe, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "Chloe, please, tell me you had nothing to do with this. Tell me he tricked you." Chloe took a slow step backward, folding her arms over her chest. She didn't look guilty. She looked disgusted. "I didn't trick her, Ethan," Julian said, stepping up beside her and placing his hand firmly on her waist. She didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned into him. "Why, Chloe?" My voice broke. "We've been married for 4 years. I gave you everything. You gave me a life of waiting around for you." Chloe snapped back, her voice cold and devoid of affection. "You're boring, Ethan. You're weak. You spend all your time staring at lines of code, promising me that, one day, we'll be rich and powerful. Julian is rich now. He has real influence. He can give me the life I actually deserve." "You chose him, because of money?" "I chose him because he's a real man," she spat. "You're just a glorified worker bee. I'm tired of waiting for you to become somebody." Julian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope, tossing it carelessly onto the coffee table. "That's a pre-drawn divorce agreement," Julian said smoothly. "Chloe is taking the house and the car. You have 10 minutes to grab your clothes and clear out before I call security to have you arrested for trespassing." "You're kicking me out of my own house?" I gasped, looking back and forth between them. It's Julian's house now, Ethan, Chloe said coldly. Sign the paper and leave. Don't make this any more embarrassing for yourself than it already is. I looked down at the documents on the table, then at my wife's indifferent face, and finally at Julian's smug smirk. My hands shook so violently I couldn't open my fists. I didn't sign the paper. I turned around, walked out the front door, and stepped into the freezing rain outside. Standing on the driveway, soaking wet as the heavy oak door slammed shut behind me, my heart felt completely hollowed out. Everything I loved had been burned to ashes in 10 minutes. But as the ice-cold rain washed down my face, the heartbreak slowly turned into something else, a silent, burning rage. I looked back at the house one last time. I will come back for everything, I whispered to the empty dark, and I will take back twice as much. The cold seeped through the thin fabric of my rain-soaked jacket, shivering right down to my bones. I huddled in the driver's seat of my 10-year-old sedan, parked in the dark corner of a neon-lit 24-hour diner lot. The heater had died an hour ago, emitting nothing but a faint, whistling wheeze. I tapped my phone screen, watching the harsh red text flash across my online banking app. Account suspended. Contact customer support. Every single one, I muttered to myself, rubbing my tired eyes. He blocked every single cent. My phone buzzed in my trembling hand. A notification from a tech news portal popped up on my screen. I clicked it, my stomach dropping into a bottomless pit as I read the headline out loud. Ethan Vance terminated from Vance Tech amid allegations of fraud and embezzlement. I read, my voice cracking in the dark cabin. Julian, you complete monster. He hadn't just stolen my startup. He was actively destroying my professional reputation so I could never get hired in the tech industry again. I slumped against the steering wheel, hot tears finally overflowing and burning against my cold cheeks. I had no home, no money, no career, and the woman I loved had thrown me away like trash for a richer man. A sharp knock on my driver's side window made me flinch. I rolled the window down an inch. Standing outside in the drizzle was my younger brother, Marcus, holding 2 steaming paper cups. I tracked your phone's last ping, Marcus said, his voice filled with worry. Ethan unlocked the door. You're freezing. I hit the switch and Marcus slid into the passenger seat, immediately handing me one of the cups. Drink this. It's hot coffee. I wrapped my numb fingers around the cardboard cup, unable to look him in the eye. You shouldn't have come, Marcus. I'm a mess. I lost everything. I read the news online an hour ago, Marcus said softly, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his cup. Tell me the truth, Ethan. Did you really steal from your own board? No. I snapped, looking at him instantly. Julian forged my signature while I was in Tokyo. He bought out my board behind my back. And Chloe? Chloe helped him do it. Marcus swore under his breath, shaking his head in disbelief. Chloe was in on it? After everything you sacrificed for her? She said I was weak, I whispered, staring blindly at the rainy windshield. She said I was boring and that Julian was a real man. She was standing right beside him in our home, Marcus. She handed me divorce papers and had me thrown out in the rain. She's a terrible person, Ethan, Marcus said fiercely, turning to face me. Look at me. She spent 4 years draining your bank account for designer clothes and fancy dinners while you worked yourself into the ground. She never cared about your dream, she only cared about the lifestyle you provided. I don't have anything left, Marcus, I choked out, a wave of dark hopelessness washing over me. My reputation is gone. No investor will ever talk to me again. I might as well just drive this car into the river. Marcus grabbed my shoulder tightly, shaking me hard. Don't you dare say that. Listen to me, Ethan Vance. Why shouldn't I? I shouted, my chest heaving. Julian owns my code. He owns my life. Because Julian Thorne didn't build Vance Tech. You did. Marcus yelled back, his eyes flashing with raw intensity. You wrote every single line of that software in my college dorm room. You are the genius behind that company, not Julian, and definitely not Chloe. They stole a coat of paint, Ethan, but you own the whole foundation. I stared at my brother, the loud ringing in my ears slowly fading as his words sank in. Come home with me, Marcus said, his tone softening as he let go of my shoulder. My apartment is tiny and the couch is terrible, but it's safe. You can sleep, you can reset, and then you build something bigger. I took a deep breath, the scalding coffee warming my hands, though a cold, sharp fire was beginning to spark inside my chest. Marcus was right. Julian had stolen my current assets, but he couldn't steal my mind. He didn't know how to innovate. He only knew how to take. My couch is waiting, Marcus pushed gently. What do you say? Is the coffee at your place better than this? I asked, offering a small, weak smile. Marcus laughed, a sound of relief. Significantly better. Now turn this rust bucket around and follow me. I turned the key in the ignition, listening to the engine roar to life. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot and my hair was soaked, but the look of helpless defeat was gone. They think they destroyed me, I said quietly as I pulled out of the parking lot behind Marcus's car. They think I'm just going to lie down and vanish. Chloe wanted a man with real power and luxury. Julian wanted to rule the tech world using my blood and sweat. They thought they had won the ultimate prize, but all they had done was trigger their own eventual ruin. I'm not running away, I promised the empty passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I will build a new empire from nothing. And when I come back, Julian, I won't just take my company back, I will buy yours. Ethan, you need to eat something, Marcus said, placing a plate of sandwiches next to my triple monitor setup. You've been staring at those algorithms for 20 hours straight. I can't stop now, Marcus, I replied, my eyes glued to the scrolling green code. I just finalized the core neural network for the engine. It processes market trends 40 times faster than the legacy platform I built for Vance Tech. 2 years in this tiny spare bedroom, man, Marcus chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. You look like a mad scientist, but the tech is insane. It has to be, I said, rubbing my tired eyes. Julian is still selling my old software, but it's completely outdated. Tonight is the annual Silicon Venture Summit. If I can get 5 minutes on that stage, everything changes. 2 hours later, I stood in the back of the bustling convention hall, smoothing down my plain black suit. Investors and executives mingled in every direction, sipping expensive wine. Ladies and gentlemen, the speaker's voice echoed over the audio system. Our next presenter is Ethan Vance, founder of Ether Systems. I walked onto the main stage, taking a deep breath as the bright lights hit my face. I held up a small remote clicker. 2 years ago, my former company was taken from me. I began, my voice steady and echoing clearly across the auditorium. Many of you in this room were told I was a fraud. But code doesn't lie. Today I am introducing Ether, an AI analytics platform that renders legacy systems, including Thorne Media's Vance Tech platform, completely useless. I pressed the button, launching a live comparison demonstration on the giant overhead screen. Whispers immediately broke out across the audience as my engine processed complex financial forecasts in real time, demolishing the industry standard metrics. As I walked off stage to polite applause, an elderly man with silver hair and a sharp tailored tuxedo stepped into my path, leaning lightly on a dark wooden cane. That was a bold presentation, young man, the old man said, his piercing blue eyes holding my gaze. I am Dr. Arthur Pendleton. My heart skipped a beat. Dr. Pendleton was a legendary venture capitalist who had built 3 separate tech empires. It's an honor, Dr. Pendleton, I said, shaking his hand. I'm Ethan. I know who you are, Dr. Pendleton smiled softly. I also know Julian Thorne stole your previous startup. I can spot a stolen product from a mile away, and Thorne is a salesman, not an innovator. Your demo tonight was brilliant. Thank you, sir. I'm currently seeking seed funding to launch nationwide. How much do you need? Dr. Pendleton asked directly. $5 million to cover servers and top-tier engineering talent, I replied without hesitation. Dr. Pendleton chuckled, shaking his head. $5 million is amateur money, Ethan. I don't back small operations. I will write you a check for $20 million tomorrow morning. I stared at him in absolute shock. $20 million? On one condition, Dr. Pendleton added, his tone growing serious. You build an empire that wipes Thorne Media off the map. Julian Thorne represents everything toxic about this industry. Consider it done, I said, my chest swelling with determination. Good. Now you need someone to protect you from his dirty legal tricks, Dr. Pendleton said, turning slightly toward a sharp-dressed woman standing behind him with a leather briefcase. This is Samantha Reed. She is the best corporate attorney in the state. Samantha stepped forward, offering a firm, confident handshake. Her dark eyes were sharp and analytical. I've read your original contracts with Vance Tech, Ethan, Sam said, her voice cool and precise. Julian's acquisition was sloppy. He relied on forged signatures and corrupt board votes. I can build a legal shield around Ether Systems that will render any lawsuit he files totally useless. Can we go after him for the original forgery? I asked. Not yet, Sam advised, a cold, calculated smile appearing on her lips. If we sue him now, he'll stall in court for years. We wait. We let Ether take his market share first. We bleed his company dry financially, and when he is weak and drowning in debt, we strike. I like the way you think, Sam, I said, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in 2 years. Then let's get to work, Sam replied, pulling a tablet from her bag. I've already drafted the incorporation papers for Ether Systems. Over the next 18 months, Ether Systems took the industry by storm. Backed by Dr. Pendleton's massive capital and Sam's impenetrable legal defense, my platform captured contract after contract. I sat in my new glass corner office in downtown Los Angeles, reviewing our latest quarterly earnings report with Sam and Marcus, who was now our head of internal operations. Thorne Media just lost their 3 biggest corporate clients to us, Marcus announced, tossing a report onto my desk with a wide grin. Their stock price crashed 30% this morning. Julian tried to patch his outdated software last week, Sam added, sipping her black coffee. It caused a major system outage for his clients. He's burning through cash at an alarming rate just to keep the lights on. What about Chloe? I asked, looking out the window at the skyline below. She spent the last 2 years throwing lavish parties on Julian's dime, Sam said coldly. But rumors say Julian's personal accounts are leveraged to the hilt. He's taking out massive loans just to maintain their fake lifestyle. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking at my reflection in the dark glass. I was no longer the naive husband who spent months overseas while his life was stolen out from under him. It's time to move to the next phase, Sam, I said, my voice ice cold. Start quietly buying up Thorne Media's corporate debt through our offshore holding companies. Already on it, Ethan, Sam smiled, closing her tablet. Julian thinks he's fighting a competitor. He has no idea he's about to meet his new landlord. The acquisition strategy is moving ahead of schedule, Sam reported, sliding a thick blue folder across my mahogany desk. We now control nearly 40% of Thorne Media's high-yield corporate debt through our primary shell entity. And Julian has no idea who is purchasing it? I asked, scanning the balance sheets with a practiced eye. None whatsoever, Sam replied with a sharp, triumphant smile. He's so distracted trying to patch the core system failures in your old software that he's signing anything his lenders put in front of him. His operational costs have doubled, and his revenue has plummeted 60% over the last 2 quarters. That's what happens when a glorified salesman tries to run an enterprise software firm without understanding the code, I said, closing the folder. He thought stealing my past work was enough to sustain him forever. He's bleeding cash rapidly, Marcus added, leaning over my shoulder to point at the projections. To cover his margin calls, he's taken out massive personal loans secured against his remaining equity in Thorne Media. If his stock drops another 5 points, the creditors will force an immediate liquidation. Let's make sure they do, I said coldly. Keep buying every scrap of debt you can find, Sam. I want complete leverage when the hammer falls. Later that evening, I arrived at the Beverly Hills Grand Ballroom for the annual Tech Leaders Gala. Dressed in a dark tailored Italian suit, I walked through the double doors accompanied by Sam and Dr. Pendleton. The room was packed with billionaires, venture capitalists, and industry titan power players. Look who just entered on the west balcony, Dr. Pendleton murmured, gesturing subtly with his glass of sparkling water. Our favorite corporate parasite. I turned my gaze toward the balcony. Julian Thorne stood near the bar, looking visibly worn out, his eyes bloodshot and his designer tuxedo hanging loosely on his frame. Beside him stood Chloe, wearing a dazzling diamond necklace, though her expression was tight and strained. He looks terrified, Sam observed quietly. He knows half the people in this room are dropping his services for Ether. As we made our way through the main floor, several high-profile investors rushed over to greet us, shaking my hand and offering praise for Ether's explosive growth. Ethan Vance? A high-pitched voice gasped behind me. I paused, slowly turning around. Chloe stood a few feet away, her eyes wide with total shock as she took in my appearance, the crowd of wealthy investors surrounding me, and the executive team at my side. Ethan, is that really you? Chloe asked, taking an awkward step forward. I almost didn't recognize you. I stared down at her with a completely flat, emotionless expression, saying nothing. Ethan, please, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly as she glanced nervously over her shoulder toward Julian, who was busy shouting into his phone near the bar. You look incredible. I heard rumors about Ether Systems, but I had no idea you were the one behind it. Excuse me, ma'am, are you with his party? A security guard asked, stepping forward cautiously. No, she isn't, Sam answered smoothly, placing a protective hand on my arm. Mr. Vance is currently speaking with key stakeholders. Ethan, wait. Chloe pleaded, reaching out toward my sleeve. Can we just talk for 5 minutes? Please? Things have been so hard. Julian isn't who I thought he was. He's furious all the time, he's screaming at me, and his bank accounts are completely empty. He used my credit to back his loans. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then met her pleading eyes directly. For 2 years, I had dreamed of this exact moment, imagining the anger I would pour out at her. But standing here now, looking at her desperate, tearful face, I felt no anger at all. I felt only absolute indifference. You made your choice 2 years ago, Chloe, I said, my voice low, firm, and icy cold. You told me I was weak and boring. You said Julian was a real man who could give you the life you deserved. I was stupid. Chloe sobbed softly, tears smearing her heavy makeup. He lied to me, Ethan. He used me as a trophy to hurt you. He doesn't love me. Please, I made a terrible mistake. You didn't make a mistake, I corrected her calmly, leaning in slightly so only she could hear. You made a calculation. You chose money and status over loyalty and love. Now you get to live with the arithmetic. Ethan, please, she begged, trying to grab my hand. We built a life together for 4 years. You loved me. The man who loved you died 2 years ago in the rain outside my house, I replied, pulling my arm away without a second thought. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to buy. I turned my back on her before she could utter another word, joining Dr. Pendleton and Sam as we walked toward the VIP lounge. That was remarkably cold, Ethan, Dr. Pendleton chuckled, patting my shoulder approvingly as we took our seats at the executive table. I loved every second of it. She chose her side, I said quietly, taking a sip of water as I watched Julian finally spot me from across the room, his face draining of all color as he realized who was standing at the top of the industry. Now it's time to bring down the curtain on both of them. Sam opened her tablet, showing a bold red notification. The board of Thorne Media just called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss insolvency. It's time, Ethan. Send the notice, I commanded, staring directly at Julian across the glittering hall. Tell them the lead debt holder will be attending in person. Gentlemen, please sit down. Julian's frantic voice echoed through the double doors of the top-floor conference room at Thorne Media. I stood in the glass hallway outside, watching him sweat through his tailored shirt. His hands trembled as he arranged papers on the polished mahogany table in front of 8 visibly nervous board members. We still have options, Julian insisted, pounding his fist lightly on the table. Our financial advisors assure me that a major investment fund has quietly acquired our outstanding institutional debt. They are stepping in today to restructure our loans. We are not going bankrupt. And who exactly is this mystery lender, Julian? One senior board member asked angrily. Because according to our latest credit report, our accounts are frozen, and we can't even cover payroll next Friday. They will be here in 2 minutes. Julian snapped, wiping sweat from his forehead. Just let me handle the negotiation. Sam turned to me, offering a cool, sharp smile as she adjusted her leather briefcase. Everything is finalized, Ethan. All debt instruments and proxy voting shares are registered under your name. The company is officially yours. Let's go take what's mine, I said quietly. I pushed open the heavy frosted glass doors and stepped into the boardroom, flanked by Sam on my right and Dr. Pendleton on my left. Marcus walked right behind us, holding the official legal binders. The room fell dead silent. Julian turned around, a furious sneer instantly contorting his face as he recognized me. What the hell are you doing here, Ethan? Julian shouted, pointing an angry finger at my face. This is a private emergency board meeting. Security. Get this fraud out of my building immediately. Sit down, Julian, Dr. Pendleton said, his voice booming with authority as he leaned lightly on his wooden cane. Security won't be helping you today. Dr. Pendleton? Julian blinked in sheer confusion, his eyes darting frantically between us. I don't understand. What is this? Sam stepped forward, resting her briefcase on the long mahogany table and opening it with 2 loud metallic clicks. She pulled out a thick stack of stamped legal documents and slid them directly down the center of the table toward the board members. My name is Samantha Reed, primary legal counsel for Ether Holdings, Sam announced in a crisp, clear tone. As of 8 o'clock this morning, Ether Holdings has officially acquired 82% of Thorne Media's defaulted corporate bonds and secured 54% of total voting shares through private buyouts. Julian's face drained of every drop of color. What? No. That's impossible. Who authorized this? You did, Julian, I said, stepping right up to the head of the table where he stood. Over the past 6 months, You signed every high-interest credit agreement we put in front of you just to keep your failing company afloat. You used your own equity as collateral. You. Julian gasped, his eyes wide with absolute horror. You bought my debt. We don't just own your debt, Mr. Thorne, Sam interrupted coldly. We own your software licenses, your corporate accounts, your patents, and this physical building. Ethan Vance is now the majority owner and chairman of Thorne Media. This is a joke. Julian screamed, slamming both palms down on the table, his breath coming in ragged gasps. You can't do this to me. I built this empire. You stole my investors, Ethan. You stole my startup 2 years ago, Julian, I replied calmly, looking him dead in the eye without flinching. You bribed my board members and forged my signature. You thought you were a ruthless businessman, but you were just a common thief in an expensive suit. Ethan, please? Julian suddenly dropped his aggressive tone, his voice cracking as sheer panic overtook him. He took a desperate step toward me, holding out his hands. We can work this out. Let's make a deal. Keep me on as chief operating officer. I know the clients, I know the market. You need me to run this place. I don't need a thief running my company, I said, my voice steady and cold. Julian Thorne, you are fired. Effective immediately. You can't fire me, he shrieked. I looked over my shoulder toward 2 large security officers standing by the entrance. Guards, please escort Mr. Thorne off the premises. If he refuses to leave, have him arrested for trespassing. The guards moved quickly, grabbing Julian by his arms and pulling him backward out of the boardroom. You ruined me, Vance. Julian screamed, struggling against the guards as his voice faded down the hallway. You destroyed my life. I turned to the remaining board members, who were sitting in stunned silence. Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. My team will review your positions by the end of the week. I walked out of the boardroom toward the private executive elevator. As the doors opened in the main lobby on the ground floor, a figure suddenly rushed toward me through the marble foyer. Ethan. Ethan, wait. It was Chloe. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her hair disheveled as she tried to dodge the lobby security guards. Ethan, please speak to me, she sobbed, throwing herself toward my arm. I saw Julian being dragged out by police. He lost everything, Ethan. He's broke. I know, I said quietly, stopping near the front glass doors. He lied to me, Ethan. Chloe wept, placing her trembling hands over her face. He manipulated me 2 years ago. He forced me to sign those divorce papers. I never wanted to hurt you. I still love you, Ethan. Please take me back. We can start over. I looked down at her, feeling a profound sense of closure wash over me. I reached into Sam's folder, pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it out to Chloe. What is this? She asked, her voice shaking as she took it. It's a copy of the divorce agreement you handed me 2 years ago in the rain, I said softly, looking at her one last time. You told me then that you wanted a man with real power and luxury. You made your choice, Chloe. Now you have to live with it. Without waiting for her response, I turned around and walked out into the bright morning sunlight, leaving her crying alone on the cold marble floor. Here is the news at 6. The news anchor's voice echoed softly from the television mounted in the corner of my private suite. Julian Thorne, former CEO of Thorne Media, was taken into federal custody earlier today. He faces multiple counts of corporate fraud, bank deception, and illegal wire transfers stemming from his previous acquisitions. I leaned back against the mahogany desk, holding a glass of sparkling water, and muted the screen with a quiet click of the remote. Did you hear the update about Julian? Marcus asked, stepping into my office with a stack of signed expansion contracts under his arm. I just watched it on the news, I replied, looking up at my brother with a faint, steady smile. It's officially over for him. It gets even worse, Marcus chuckled, settling into the leather chair opposite my desk. The feds froze his remaining assets this morning. He couldn't even post bail. His own legal defense team abandoned him because his retainer checks bounced. And Chloe? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Marcus sighed, his expression turning slightly sympathetic. I ran into her old friend David yesterday. Chloe lost the house when the bank foreclosed on Julian's defaulted property loans. She's living in a tiny studio apartment on the edge of the city now, working double shifts as a waitress just to cover her monthly rent. She wanted luxury, I murmured, staring out at the high-rise towers of downtown Los Angeles. She traded everything for an illusion. Are you happy about it, Ethan? Marcus asked quietly, searching my eyes. Seeing them fall like this? I thought about his question for a long moment, tuning into my own heart. 2 years ago, I thought seeing them suffer would bring me ultimate satisfaction. But standing here today? I don't feel joy in their misery, Marcus. I just feel peace. The glass door opened and Sam walked in, looking sharp in an emerald blazer, carrying a bottle of champagne. Right behind her was Dr. Arthur Pendleton, leaning comfortably on his wooden cane. The gala hall downstairs is completely packed, Ethan, Sam announced, a rare, warm smile gracing her lips. Over 500 engineers, executives and journalists are waiting for the founder of Vance Enterprises to address them. We just finalized the integration of Thorne Media's old assets under your core division, Dr. Pendleton added, nodding approvingly at me. The market valuation of Vance Enterprises crossed $2 billion at the market close today. You built an absolute juggernaut, son. We built it, I corrected him, stepping out from behind my desk to shake Dr. Pendleton's hand firmly. None of this would have been possible without your belief in me, Arthur. Or without Sam's legal iron curtain, and Marcus keeping me sane in that tiny spare bedroom. You did the hard work, Ethan, Sam said softly, pouring 4 glasses of champagne. You took the worst betrayal imaginable, processed the pain and turned it into raw fuel. Most people break under that kind of pressure. You evolved. To evolution, Dr. Pendleton declared, lifting his glass into the air. To Vance Enterprises, Marcus added, clinking his glass against mine. To true freedom, I said quietly, taking a small sip as the liquid bubbled on my tongue. The crowd is waiting for your speech, boss, Sam reminded me, pointing toward the private elevator. What are you going to tell them tonight? I'm going to tell them the truth, I answered. We took the elevator down to the grand ballroom. As the double doors opened, a roar of applause echoed throughout the decorated hall. Hundreds of employees, investors and media personnel turned toward the entrance, cheering and raising their glasses in my direction. Flashbulbs popped as I walked up the steps to the main podium. I adjusted the microphone, looking out over the massive crowd of smiling faces. Beside the stage stood Marcus, Sam, and Dr. Pendleton, the true partners who had believed in me when I had nothing left to offer. Thank you, everyone, I began, my voice clear and powerful, bouncing off the high ceilings of the ballroom. The entire room instantly went quiet, hanging on every word. 3 years ago, I stood in the freezing rain, stripped of my company, my money, my home, and my dignity, I said, leaning over the podium. I believed my life was completely ruined. I thought that the betrayal of those I trusted defined who I was. I paused, scanning the faces of the young developers sitting in the front rows. I spent a long time being angry, I continued softly. I wanted revenge. I wanted to prove my enemies wrong. But along the way I realized something very important. Taking back my company didn't heal my heart. Buying out my rival didn't give me back my peace. The real victory wasn't destroying the people who betrayed me. The real victory was realizing that my self-worth was never theirs to take in the first place. The crowd broke into enthusiastic applause, several executives standing up to cheer. Today, Vance Enterprises isn't built on bitterness or revenge, I stated proudly, raising my hands. It is built on resilience, loyalty, and relentless innovation. We don't look back at the people who tried to bury us. We look forward to the future we are building together. As the applause swelled into a thunderous ovation, I stepped back from the microphone, feeling a deep, quiet warmth spread across my chest. I looked up toward the giant glass ceiling of the atrium, watching the city lights glitter against the clear night sky. The betrayal, the cold rain, the sleepless nights, and the heartbreak, they were all behind me now. I had stepped out of the ashes of my past, not as a victim seeking payback, but as a man who finally owned his own destiny.